You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we hang out and talk about everything from hammocks and hammock camping to the group hangs from around the country. Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of the Hammock Hangers Podcast. I am your host, Paul Collins, or Skunkape. Our guest this week is Kurt Zitzelman, the owner of Hemlock Mountain Outdoors out of Pennsylvania. We have a chat with Kurt to hear his story of how he got into hammock camping and how that led into starting the company and making hammocks, tarps, quilts, and accessories for others to buy and enjoy. Let's go ahead and dive into our chat with Kurt so we can hear more from him. All right, everybody, we're here with our guest this week, Kurt Zitzelman. He is the owner of Hemlock Mountain Outdoors out of Pennsylvania.
That's right.
How you doing today, Kurt?
Good. How you doing there, Skunkape? And hi to everybody listening.
Not too bad. Not too bad. So, all right, let's go ahead and just jump right on in and, get started on the story of how you got into camping and how that led to you getting into hammock camping.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's probably the same story I've heard 1,000 times. Did it as a child. My family had an old farm. It was like 73 acres, and we had a pond back there. And for me, going away to camp was bizarre.
Okay.
We just went back on the property or to like a neighbor's property and we would camp. And it was all tent camping or just cowboy camping. And it wasn't until I got my driver's license and started, you don't want to be home, that I started going out and car camping and even thinking about doing anything like backpacking. But I didn't even get into that until we were just talking. I lived in Florida for 6.5 years, and I moved back to PA in 2012.
Okay.
And that's when I really wanted to get into back into camping, because I've been out of it for a couple of years, doing a few trips down in Florida, doing kayaking, camping, which is similar to backpacking.
Right.
You got to get your gear pared down. But I started buying new gear, getting things smaller and lighter, start backpacking. And then a friend of mine was like, "Hey, have you ever tried a hammock?" And I'd seen them, but I never knew you could camp in one.
Gotcha.
Because everything I had before I've had everything from like little pup tents and up to big canvas cabin tents. And
okay.
But a hammock was just kind of a bizarre concept to me. And I went out and started looking at them and found on, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you're even still around, Sierra Trading Post.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if they're still around, but yeah, I do remember seeing them.
And you get crazy good deals on that website.
Right.
And we found a trick where if you put something in your shopping cart and you just left the page, about 2 days later, they send you an email and be like, "Hey, with like 25% free shipping, get you to buy this?" Well, yes, it would. Yeah.
You found a loophole.
We found
I like
a loophole.
That. I like that.
I found, and it was an Eno, I want to say it was called a Pro Nest.
Okay.
And I knew nothing. I knew nothing about hammocks. So it was just the hammock. They didn't have a suspension with it. They didn't offer suspensions on the website. So I think I paid like $20 for it.
Was it netted or just the standard netless?
Just a standard netless hammock.
Okay.
And it looked small. And I knew nothing. And I really wanted to just try it because I did cable for 18 years and carrying the ladder around, climbing in attics and in basements, and it killed my back. So I wanted to see if I could do it.
Right.
So this thing shows up. I went up to the local store and bought a set of Atlas straps because I knew it didn't come with the suspension. And I figured I guess that's a suspension. I'll just grab that thing. And this hammock shows up and it's about this big. It's tiny. It was less than 9 feet. When I was laying in it, I'm only 5'10".
Right.
My feet were almost touching the bottom, the bottom end, and my head was almost touching the top end.
Oh,
And
good
it was
God.
little. It was like a kid's hammock. And I took it to a state park and set it up in a couple trees and just sat in it. And immediately realized this is not for camping, but I understand why people like it. So I just started messing around with that. I had and you know, it's like when you start getting into something new with gear. Before that hammock showed up, I had the suspension and I had a stand for my house already. That
Oh,
stand just
yeah.
kind of sat
Yep.
in my room waiting for the hammock to show up. I was like, oh, I can't wait. uh, but yeah, so I got that thing and used it just for hiking, and started looking at something bigger, something to camp in. So I got a really well priced Xped, what do they call it, Scout hammock combi.
Okay.
So it was a hammock, a tarp, it had the bug net, a suspension, the whole thing. It was like a $300 hammock. Moose Jaw was selling it for like $70,
Okay.
but they had to wait until they got so many people to buy it. So it took probably 3 months to get it. By the time that showed up, I had already bought a double nest and a bug net and a tarp and quilts, and I had a full on setup. And that's what I rocked for the first year, was
Okay.
that setup,
Okay.
and tried backpacking with that and went, nope, this is way too big, way too heavy. It wasn't. I didn't mind the size. I got used to that just under 10-foot size, but that thing was heavy. It was a heavy, heavy hammock.
So is that when you decided to just attempt to make your own,
um,
or
kind of,
was it
yes.
okay?
So I've always been into creating something, whether it's videos or music or my own gear, anything like that. I just like putting the stuff out there.
Okay.
So I was making small stuff, Reflectix pouches, and I had made a underquilt out of a SOL emergency blanket
Okay.
and some like just tape and some cordage, just so I had it just in case.
Right.
And I was on a road trip in Maine, up at Acadia National Park, and I was up there with my sister and a friend of mine, and I was showing her some of the stuff that I made, and I had my hammock set up, and I was like, I wish it kind of did this. I wish it had that. I wish that. And we're sitting around the campfire, and she just says, "Have you ever thought about making your own gear?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, actually, I have. I think I could do it." And she's like, "Well, do you know how to sew?" I said, "Well, I sewed when I was in like home ec, when I was in
Right.
like middle school. If they even still do that anymore."
I don't think
I
they
said, "I know
do.
the fundamentals of it."
Right.
And she's like, "Oh, you should make your own gear." And that's all anybody had to say, and because it was already in my head, and I'm like,
Right.
"Okay." So within a week of getting back from that trip, I had bought a sewing machine. I had like a bunch of fabric coming, and I just started making my own stuff and just learned as I went. And I don't know if it's on the wall. This little orange hammock you can see behind me right there.
Yep. Yep.
That is the first hammock I ever made.
That's the first one you
And
ever made, huh?
that's the first one I ever made.
Okay.
And I still use it. I use it as a day hammock. It's like a 9.5 foot little hammock. It looks like crap, but it works. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
yeah, and just start making gear. And then as people were seeing it, they were looking at it, and they didn't really understand the concept of I made it.
Right.
Here's my hammock, here's my quilts, here's my tarp. Start making everything. And they're like, "Oh, you mean you bought the hammock and you bought the tarp and you bought all this stuff and then you just made your own setup?" And I'm like, "No, I bought the raw materials and I made it." And they were like, "Oh, make me one." So I hear a lot of small businesses. That's kind of how they started. They never really
Right.
intended to make for other people. It just kind of happened. So that's
Gotcha.
kind of how the business started. And I never thought I'd be still going after like 6 years right now. So
So how did you come up with the name Hemlock Mountain Outdoors?
um, originally, me and my buddy were gonna do the business together.
Okay.
So I was trying to think of something that was kind of Pennsylvania oriented and would be something that we were both interested in. So I was doing cable at the time, and it was a slow day. I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm just writing down names. And I'm like, well, I know I don't want hammock in the name because I want to make more than just hammocks, and I don't want to have to rebrand at some point if I wind up making other things.
Right.
So I kind of already knew it was going to be something like outfitters or outdoors or something like that. And I was like, well, I like the mountains. So I wrote that down. My buddy likes hemlocks and this, and it just had all these names. I'm just kind of putting them together. And I thought, well, man, if only there was a Hemlock Mountain in Pennsylvania, that would be great.
Right.
Because we don't really have a lot of named mountains in the state. You have like the Poconos, you have like regions.
Right.
So I'm like, I go online, let's put it in. And sure enough, there is a Hemlock Mountain.
Is there?
In the Pennsylvania wilds.
Okay.
Yeah. So I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's cool. There's actually a Hemlock Mountain here. I'm like, that's too easy. That's the first one I came up with that I like. Somebody's got to have that name. And I looked it up and it was available. I did like a quick title search on it.
Right.
So I logged in with the state and I'm like, I want this name. I want this to be my business. And I thought for sure they'd come back and be like, no, somebody's got it. But it was available. So I just, here, take my money. Just do it. Then that's just, it was just luck that the first thing, one of the first ones that I came up with was the one I actually used.
That's pretty awesome.
But the when you look at Hemlock Mountain, like when it pops up on the internet, when you're image searching it, that kind of contour I have over the logo is the actual contour of the mountain.
Okay.
And it's kind of just worked that into the way it looks. It's more of a ridge than a mountain.
Right.
But it's got the mountain in the name. So
that's pretty neat. So, let's see. So how long did you say you've had the business going for now?
Officially launched it in 2018, in May of 2018. But started building. It didn't take long. That trip to Maine was in 2016. That's when I started making gear, and then by January of 2017, I knew what I wanted to do. It's completely changed since then. Gotcha. But I had my first real well-made hammock that I made, and I just started beating the crap out of it in the wild and seeing what happened and seeing if it failed, trying to make it fail. So it's like 2016, 2017 is when I really started working on things.
Okay. All right. Now, what's all the? I know you make hammocks, you make tarps, you make the quilts.
Yep.
And I know there's a few accessories, like little accessory bags and stuff like that you make as well, correct?
Yeah, pouches. Hammock pillows, hammock chairs. Just plain suspensions if you just want suspension. What I call a pack hanger. It's just a strap. It's like a belt that you just click onto the tree and adjust it to the tree, and then you hang your pack on it, so you don't have to tie off a rope or hang it from the.
I gotcha.
Just little things like that. And it's a lot of stuff that the blueprints are just in my head, and I have a few friends that yell at me because I don't write this stuff down. Like, what if you forget how to make something?
You got to have it written down just in case something happens. Right? So, let's talk about some of the hammocks and gear and all that you do make. As far as, 'cause I know you got like 3 or 4 different hammocks that you make, correct?
Right? Yeah, I got 3 hammocks. I got a netless hammock called the West Rim, which is just kind of what I originally started with, that concept. And I thought that would be, when I started, I didn't really know. And I thought the modular design would be a better way to go, because you could, if you just needed the hammock, just take the hammock and it'd be lighter. But I think I sold 2 of those setups, and that's when I realized I needed to change. And then I the next model was what I call the Coyote Pack, and 11-foot extra wide, 72 inches wide netted hammock, and that's like the luxury model. It's a big, comfortable hammock, and in between those two, I've got the Red Tail, which this year just took off with some new fabric deals that I got, and wound up getting a ridiculously good price on a whole bunch of fabric, and I was able to nosedive the price on that hammock down to $70.
Gotcha.
And still, like, as I'm the only employee, I'm the only person I got, so
Right.
I don't have the overhead. And at that price point, that hammock just absolutely took off, and it's kept me busy since April. Every time I start to catch up on orders, they just pile back in, which that's a really good problem to have.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not
Now I
complaining.
know I just saw a video where you made a few changes to a couple of them, didn't you?
Yeah. So in the beginning of the year, I changed the way the red tail was made to make it closer to the coyote pack with end caps. The original design was just all netting on the top, and it wound up being a lot harder to get that to look right on a hammock by hammock basis. So I switched it out to the end caps, and then just recently, that back up a second there, but the way that hammock was set up was you could either do like a zip around hammock where you take the bug net all the way back and tuck it into the end cap,
Right.
or the original design for it where it had a zipper on either side, and then you could unzip those all the way to either end and then store the net up on the ridgeline.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it was really split 50-50 on what people were buying. Some people like that zip around, some people like that dual zip design. And I was sitting there one day and I was like, man, if I could just combine the two, and it would make it so much simpler, so I don't have to have a different way of cutting the bug net and cutting the zipper. And I just messed around with it a little bit, and I got the design to work. So either way, I call it multi-mode. So now all of them have that. You can go all the way around, or you can just have the sides, which when you're in a hammock, if you need to readjust your quilt and you've only got a zipper on one side, you either got to reach like underneath you and try to,
Right.
Or you got to zip your bug net all the way around to the opposite side of the hammock, which is a pain when you're in it. So those two zippers on either side allow you to reach out on either side. So now you get that ability to pull the bug net all the way back when you don't want it, and have the access to both sides.
Okay. All right. So now, between I know you said you have the netless,
Mhm.
and then you have the red tail.
Yep.
And then the coyote pack.
Right.
Now it looks like you have. Is there two different red tails? Is there an 11-foot, and then is the other one a different length?
Yeah. So the red tail they're all a 58-inch body, and there's an option of a 10-foot or an 11-foot.
Okay.
And then the coyote pack is always an 11-foot, but you have an option in the widths, either a 58 or a 72.
Okay. Gotcha.
They're a lot closer now than they used to be. And the coyote pack is made with Dutch Ware's Hexon fabric.
Okay.
And there's more attention paid to like the thread color. Like the thread color will match on the straps and the hammock and all that. Little things like that I pay a lot more attention to for the coyote pack, where the red tails more make it fast, so they all get gray thread. It's just
gotcha. Okay,
to help keep that price down.
Okay, so the coyote pack can be a little more custom, I guess.
Well, I'll customize anything, anything anybody wants. But yeah, the standard design of it is just easier. It's a faster build for me to make the red tail.
Okay.
And then with the cheaper fabrics, well, I should say the less expensive fabrics, they're still good fabrics.
Okay. All right. And then
I know you have a Clark hammock, right?
I've got several hammocks. Yes, I've got Clarks, I've got Dutch Ware, the Chameleons, I've got Walhallas. I've got a bunch of different ones.
Right. So the fabric that I'm using for the red tail, the 70D ripstop is actually old Clark fabric.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dutch was getting rid of, he wanted to sell all that stuff, and that's when I started using Dutch Ware as my supplier, and they're like, "Oh, we got this fabric, and you're a wholesaler, so here's your deal."
So it's the same material as the bed of the hammock.
I assume so. I've never actually seen a Clark, but I know.
Okay. I know they use different. I know they use different fabrics for the bed and then for the top.
Yeah.
cover.
I think it's
part?
for
Yeah.
the bed. It's a 70D
Okay.
like square ripstop. So yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. So it's
Because the 70D is a heavier duty, kind
yeah,
of
it's like
thicker,
1.8,
isn't it?
1.9 ounce fabric.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it'd be
like
the
a real
bed of
nice
the
soft fabric.
tarps then.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I got that deal, I was just like, just give me everything you got, just send it. And I didn't really have room
Just
to
send
store it. I mean,
it.
I can't beat that deal. So
Well, I am glad to know that I'm not the only one that just, tells Dutch, okay, here's my money.
yeah.
Just give me.
And they're great to work with. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's well, we've got this. How much do you want? Well, all of it. So they were selling.
Gotcha.
They had it might have been from Clark. All the zipper coil tape that they had, and I was buying
Could have
little bits
been.
of it and little bits of it here and little bits of it there. And one day I was just like, I'm like, how much of this do you have? Because it looked like it was run out of stock on the website.
Right.
And he's like, well, we've got this much, but then we also have these little snippets here and like this much there. And I'm like, anything you got that's over 8 feet, just put it in a box and send it to me. How much do you want? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, okay. Send it. I've got zipper tape everywhere right now.
Nice. Yeah, because I know when Dutch did, buy out, he had a lot of stuff.
And he still got some.
I know they even gave him the old rope that they used to use, because before they switched to the setup that they have now, um, Clarks were just sent out with a black rope, and you would take it and wrap it around the tree and go through the little drip loops that they would send with you, and all that. And I remember, when was it? It was I think year before last at HangCon. Dutch comes up to me. He's like, "Do you want some rope?" I was like, "No, I do not want that rope.
Trying to get rid of this rope.
Do not want it." I go, "That's the first thing that I change out." I go, "You should know that, Dutch." I was like, because every time I'd get a Clark, I go, I'd order my Clark. My next purchase would be to you for the suspension to replace it. So, but so now, with the tarps that you make, is there just one style of tarp, or do you got different tarps that you make? Or
I've got two. I mean, I do like a rectangle tarp, a flat tarp is
okay,
my go-to, and it's 10, 11, or 12 feet. I mean, I'm whatever. If somebody wants something custom, I'll make it.
gotcha,
But I do make an ASIM tarp out of the extra wide like xenon. So there's no seams in
okay,
it, but it's really small. It's more like a fly than a rain tarp. Um,
okay,
yeah, and that one's just for like you don't think it's going to rain. You're not the camper
gotcha.
who goes out when the weather's bad, but you want that tarp just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah, yeah. I got a friend
Okay,
who bought one, and he's like, "This isn't as big as I thought it was going to be." And I was like, "Well, you bought a little one. What do you want?"
gotcha. Okay. Um. So, is there, out of the hammocks and everything, is there one that most people lean more towards than the other? I mean, as far as like the red tail or the coyote pack.
It used to be the Coyote Pack. That
Okay.
was my big seller, and then this year when I was able to drop the price on that red tail, that's hard for a lot of people to pass up.
Sure.
That's a
Makes
because it's
sense.
not. I've had a couple people ask, I'm like, well, you don't make this, right? You're getting this made overseas, and nope, no, I just got over the last year or so, I started looking at expanding, not just relying on one supplier for things. So a lot of the
Gotcha.
stuff that I now carry, I've got my own deals for. So I'm cutting
Okay.
out the middleman. So my overhead is way lower than it's ever been. So I don't mind
Okay.
passing that on. I'm not trying to get rich. I'm just trying to make gear and
Right. Right.
have people like it.
Make good quality gear
Yeah,
for everybody.
yeah,
Okay. Understandable.
yeah.
That works.
And I try to keep things simple. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a backpacker, so I don't want to roll into camp after putting in like a 16 to 18 mile day and trying to figure out how to set my gear up. I just want to put the straps up and you know get it done.
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
I'm
so
the
that's
same
how
way.
I design. Somebody was like, "Well, there's not much." I saw somebody left a comment on a post somewhere, and they're like, "Well, it looks like nice gear, but it's not much to write home about." Well, that's kind of the point. Simple
right? I mean,
is reliable. That's what you want.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I saw your watched your video the other day of you actually out on the Appalachian Trail.
Oh yeah. Oh, the one where
Yeah,
we didn't
yeah,
make it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then it was funny because I remember asking you what that orange stuff was on there, and you told me to watch the video. That is weird.
Yeah, I've
I've
never seen that before.
I hadn't either.
Uh,
I mean, that was a
the
lot of that nutting.
only thing I can assume is because it was only on the peaks of those ridges, is that they
Right,
were working on those power lines and they put that down to keep erosion because it was windy. It was really windy up there, and
right.
that's the only thing I can
It
think.
looked like it took some effort to put that down because there was a lot of stuff on top of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like they put down a layer of rock, and then they put that mesh down, and then they put another layer of rock on top of it, and then
And some boulders and stuff.
yeah, and then
Yeah,
like big, not like little rocks. I mean like
yeah,
big
right.
rocks, and then they mulched a trail through it, so you didn't have to like step over the rocks. It was the nicest part of the AT I've ever walked on. Especially in
Where was
Pennsylvania.
that?
Like, you don't get
Where was that? Yeah, I know, right?
that
I
was
remember Pennsylvania.
just north of what's that? Bake Oven Knob.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like between Bake Oven Knob and I forget what the little gap is called right there. There's like a little road crossing right before that. And
Okay.
like Ashland Road, I think it's Ashford Road or something like that.
Okay, I got you.
So it was yeah.
Yeah, that
crazy.
was weird.
And
I
I've
mean,
seen some
whenever I
weird
saw the
stuff on the
little
trail, but
picture,
that one was
yeah, yeah.
and
So how often do you get out to hike on the AT and stuff? Do you not live far from
oh
the
I
AT or?
live it's almost embarrassing to tell people how many places we have to go from where I live. Uh, I'm within an hour drive of like 100 miles of the AT.
Really?
A couple hours from the Catskills. We've got state parks all over the place. We've got the Pinchot Trail, the Delaware, the Thunder Swamp Trail. We're not far from the Loyalsock Trail. Pennsylvania is loaded with trails. So the AT is kind of weird for me because I like going, but I like going on the AT with other people because
Okay.
it was never. I shouldn't say never. It's I've thought about doing the AT just through hiking it, but I've never gotten that serious about through hiking it. So it's
Okay.
not one of those like destination things because we've got so many options out here, and I'd rather be out where there's nobody, and that's not the AT. There's going to be people on the
Right.
AT.
Sure.
So I like to go to the trails. Like I just recently did the Quehanna Trail back in September, and that's
Okay.
a 74-mile loop out in the most remote part of our state. And I saw people. I passed like a couple people on the first day, a couple people on the second day, a couple people on the third day, and then I didn't see anybody on the back half of the loop for days. For the next 3 days, I didn't see
Really?
anybody, and it was awesome.
Okay.
It was. I love that
Yeah,
solitude. I love being solo out in the woods.
I can't wait until I move up to the mountains.
Where you moving
I
to?
mean, thinking about North Georgia somewhere.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Sorry about the water.
Somewhere up that way.
Yeah, but yeah, Georgia's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. My wife and I have been looking at somewhere up around like the Ellijay area, Dahlonega, somewhere like that.
Okay.
I mean, I do want to be close to the AT somewhere, so that way, it's just something about it.
Yeah.
I got to get back out onto it, but I mean, I do love hiking other trails as well. Just down here in Florida, we do have the Florida Trail, but after you've hiked, trails in the mountains and stuff,
It's a little flat.
yeah, it's hard to get it really excited about the trails down here.
Yeah.
They're flat, and you're either, you go from pine trees to open area getting, sunburnt.
Yeah.
But and periodically you're in a swamp.
Yes. Well, very often you're in a
know.
swamp.
Yeah.
From what I remember, it's very very swampy. And you got to watch
Yeah,
out for
especially
the
especially
wild boar and some
yeah,
of the all the crazy.
yeah.
One of the
I
few
mean,
animals I've ever been in the woods with that's made me nervous are boar.
yeah. I mean, 'cause, well, they half the time they can't hear you, they can't see you,
Yeah. Oh,
so
they can see you.
you can easily sneak up on them and then spook them, and then, you know, then you're running trying to climb a tree.
Where in Florida are you?
I'm in, the Claremont area, so
Okay.
Central Florida,
Yes.
not far from Orlando.
So do you know where like the Tomoka River is? Bulow Creek State Park,
Okay,
Bulow Ruins State Park. They're two state parks that kind of back up to each other.
okay,
There's a trail that goes between the two, and it's maybe a 6 or 7 mile round trip. And I used to go out there for a day hike. And I was out there one year, uh, was on my way back to the car, and I could hear uh, a wild boar out in the distance. So I'm thinking, as
yeah,
long as I can keep myself between them and the car, I'm okay. And it's a very windy trail, and at one point they get between me and the car, so I stop. I'm like, I'm gonna let them move on, let them do their thing, because like you said, they're kind of dumb and they're just kind of bumbling through the
right,
woods.
yep.
And they move off. I continue on, and off about 200 yards to my right, I can hear something tracking me. And I stop, and it stops. I go a little bit, and it goes. And I turn around and go back the other way, and it follows me. And I'm like, oh crap, here we go. So I'm looking out in the woods, and I'm kind of doing like the crazy bird, looks at the trees like side to side, trying to see what's out
Right,
there.
trying to look for movement.
Yeah, and I'm looking, and I finally spot it, and it's a boar, tusks and everything, and it's just staring at me. And I'm not used to boar. Like that's not something I grew up with.
Right,
And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, all right, so all I've got on me is I think I had like my small Leatherman with me, like my little tiny Leatherman, if I even had that. I'm like, well, that's not going to do me any good. And so I'm looking around, I'm thinking Pennsylvania, there's rocks, there's stuff like no rocks, it's just sand. And the trees are all about 3 inches, around.
yep.
And I'm like, well, I can't climb anything. I'm going to stab it with a palmetto frond. Like, what am I going to do? So I'm watching it, and it's just looking at me, and now it knows I know it's there, so it's starting to like
Right.
stomp and get aggressive. So I think, well, I know bear, when you have a bear encounter and it's getting aggressive, if you make yourself big, it'll think twice because it starts to weigh those options. Like, well, that's bigger than I am. I don't want to fight it. So I just kind of planted my feet at the base of two trees. I grabbed a hold of them, and I just kind of shook them. I was like, and this thing jumped up, spun around, and took off the other way, just going through the woods. And I
Really?
went, oh, I can't believe that worked. I thought for sure it was going to come.
Honestly, I can't either. Honestly, I can't believe it either.
So lucky, and I just right back to the car. I'm like, I got to carry a bigger knife
Because usually they don't care.
No,
I mean, I've seen them chase down, people in like the ATV gators and stuff like that, and just ram into the side of them.
Yeah. I had one charge me when I was in my kayak. There's no way it could get to me. It came right out of the woods, and I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, I know they rely mainly off their smell and everything, but
well, I was hiking all day, so I probably smelled pretty bad.
Well, they probably thought you was a Skunkape.
That could be. Were you around?
Right. So, but yeah. So, before we close out,
okay.
Usually I ask, anytime I'm talking to any of our vendors and stuff like that, what are your top?
I think I'm ready for this question.
Are you?
I've been listening to your podcast. I think I'm ready.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. What are your top 3 tips that you would give somebody new just starting out into hammock camping?
Got it. I knew it. First,
you've been practicing, haven't you?
Yeah, I have been. This one, where's my notes? No. So for people just starting in hammock camping,
yeah.
There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people who know a lot of things. The best advice I can give anybody is listen, but don't just blindly follow what anybody tells you. Try everything you can. If you got friends who have hammocks, borrow them, rent them, get an REI membership and rent a hammock if they got them. but try as much as you can, and when possible, support the smaller businesses, and even if it's not mine. Like I tell people all
Right.
the time, don't necessarily buy from me, but buy something that's quality. Because if you're spending $35 on a hammock, I can tell you exactly what that hammock costs to make, because you got to figure everybody
Right.
in that line's got to pay for it. And do you want like $2.75 worth of material holding you up in the middle of the night? So buy
That is true.
buy quality, but start cheap. Like use what works, and build from there, because you're going to learn more about what you don't like about something in the beginning than what you do like about it. So yeah, I guess that's all three wrapped into one. But do your research. Uh, Try to support small business, because small businesses need it. And
Right.
yeah, you're gonna at some point hate it, and it's gonna beat you up. And don't get discouraged, because
Awesome.
it's gonna cost you a lot of money.
Yep. Yep.
Eventually, it's going to cost you a lot of
Yep.
money.
Well, I tell a lot of people that also. Actually, I think somebody on Facebook today was asking about um, quilt or sleeping bag, and I told him my opinion, which was quilt, and the reason, because of laying on the a hammock, you're basically carrying dead weight because
Yeah,
of you're compressing the loft and blah 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 and all this, and gave him some recommendations, of a lot of our um, vendors that deal with quilts and all that stuff. And then I told him, that the two mottos that I always go by is, buy once, cry once.
yep,
Because I'd rather spend a little more for something that's quality that I'm not going to have to
yeah,
replace than to spend less and have to replace it, a year later, and eventually you're actually spending more than what you would have in the first place. And then, you know, cheap, light, durable, pick two.
yeah. Well,
Because
you're not gonna get.
you will not ever get all three in one thing.
Yeah, no.
You know, so
I swear by synthetic insulation, and down is great. It really is. But
right,
the durability of synthetic, and not just it's physical toughness, but like if
right,
I've got a down puffy, or I'm sorry, a synthetic puffy, and
hmm,
you see people wearing down puffies all the time. They got tape all over them because a stick poked it, or a flame or
right,
something. And if you've got something that's got like a sheet style synthetic insulation, you can rip the outer shell right off of that thing, and you're going to stay warm because the insulation is going to stay.
yeah,
It's just going to
that's
stay
true.
there. But you give up the packability, and you give up a lot in weight.
Right,
So my pack is always I can pack the same thing as somebody else I'm backpacking with, and I'll be 4 pounds heavier just because of that synthetic. But I never have to
right.
worry about it. It can rain on it. I can fall in a river and just hang it up, and it's still going to do the same thing. So yeah, you got to take that. You got to make that choice. What do you
Right.
save on money versus comfort or durability? Light versus heavy, cheap versus
Yep.
expensive, and it's tough because there's a lot of good options out there.
Well, I know, I mean, most of my quilts and stuff are down, um, you know, mainly because I have chosen to go with the lightness
Right.
of it. Um, but, um, I do have a, quilt also that has the, up insulation
I've
in it.
actually got something sent
That
right over there. I bought something to make a
and I
quilt for
mean,
myself, and I haven't had a chance to make it.
that is like a happy medium between the 2.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping to find out.
It's yeah, I mean, it's not as, light as down, but it's not really as heavy as like your Apex or something like
Yeah.
that. Um, and it compresses down. I actually went, God, it was probably at least a month of having it before I realized that it was not down, and I actually had to call.
Really?
I called George up from Loco
Yeah.
Libre, and talked to him, and he's like, no, he goes, that ain't down. He goes, that's
It's up.
the up insulation. I was like, well, crap.
Yeah. When I saw Dutch
So,
had that, and so this is probably almost a year ago, like
right.
right when I first started using the stuff, and uh, I saw up, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna buy some of that, and I'm gonna make myself a quilt, and I'm gonna try it out. And then the red tail took off, and I've had this stuff sitting here for a year, and I haven't had a chance to make my quilt. So I'm dying to
Nice.
use it. I might. My buddy made a down quilt for himself, so here he knows like
Yeah.
how the baffles go. Now I'm kind of tempted
Right.
just to give it to him and be like, I'll throw you some money, man. Just make me a quilt. The guy I have to have somebody else make one for me because I don't have time.
There you go. So, before we do head out, what are all your social media links and all that stuff? What are all the links that people can check you out at?
For Hemlock Mountain Outdoors, it's hemlockmountainoutdoors.com.
Okay.
My Instagram is, how's my Instagram go? It's like Hemlock MTN Outdoors. Right.
Okay.
Hemlock MTN Outdoors. One of them is ODRS because it's a shorter. I think that was Twitter, but I haven't used Twitter in forever. And then, or you can just search for Hemlock Mountain Outdoors on Facebook or Instagram.
Gotcha.
And then
Okay.
those, if you're interested in the videos, it's just you don't, no one will be able to spell my name, but I just look up KZO. They usually pop up under that on YouTube, or there's links
Okay.
to it.
Well, I mean, I will be putting all the links in the show notes also, but I always like for my guests to, tell people also. That way, if somebody don't make it all the way through the, or look into the show notes or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I mean, most of
Um,
my YouTube channel for Hemlock Mountain is mostly just product video. I use it as a place to
okay.
store videos for the website, but to see them in use more often, that's what I use all my own gear, obviously, most of the time,
Right.
unless I'm going to ground. Which I know a lot of times everybody's like, I hammock camp now, and that's all I do, unless I have no other choice, which is kind of how I
Right.
am. But I still do. I have my tent. I might be doing my Christmas trip this year with the tent just to do it. Uh,
Oh yeah.
but
I don't know if I can go back to the ground.
well, see, that's
I
the
think it
thing.
would hurt too much.
In my mind, I was like, I'm only going to do it if it stays warm, like warmer,
Right.
where I don't want to sleep on wet ground when it hits freezing.
Sure.
And now we've been getting snow, and I'm like, oh, now I kind of want to back out of using the tent because I want to sleep in the hammock because it's so comfortable. So now I'm trying to figure out another reason why I should just take the hammock instead.
I, I I just think that I think I'd be too sore to
It's
get
not fun.
out and down and everything in the morning. I mean, I
Yeah,
know how I feel just getting out of my bed,
right.
you
When I went
know.
to Arizona at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, I took just a tent because my friend who lived out there was like, you can't use a hammock in the national park, and I wasn't sure what
Right.
the tree situation was out there. I was in Grand Canyon, so I borrowed a tent from my buddy, and oh my god, it was the longest month because every time I went camping, I slept on the ground. And I came back, and like 2 days later, I was giving him back his tent. He's like, "Well, you want to go into Pinchot and just go camping tonight?" I'm like, "Yes, I need to sleep in a hammock. Let's just go." Like right in the middle of the week, we just went. It was rough. It was rough being on the ground for that long.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I mean, I know I've mentioned this before in another one of the episodes talking to somebody, but we went out and bought a whole new bedroom set, and I was like, okay, well, if we're gonna do this, my back is, always killing me in the mornings. We're gonna spend a little more and get the best Tempur-Pedic that they have. So it's like a 13-inch, the 13-inch Tempur-Pedic mattress, cool to the touch, with the adjustable frame and everything else. You see what's behind me
Yeah.
here, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I still sleep better in this than I do in that.
Yeah. My
I get up
shop
in the
is right
mornings
next to
from
my
the
bedroom, so a lot of times
yeah,
I just have my hammock hanging up in the shop. I'll just go
yeah,
sleep in there.
yeah. I mean, I get up from the bed, my back hurts, my feet hurt, and everything else. I'm walking like I'm 90 years old.
Yeah.
I sleep in my hammock. I get up the next morning, and back is fine, feet's fine. And I don't know, I don't understand it with my feet, but um, my heels don't hurt in the mornings whenever I get up in my hammock. I don't know if that's
I think it's a circulation thing.
It could be,
because I've noticed in the hammock, it feels like my circulation's better in the morning when I wake up.
Yeah.
I like I said, when I did the Quihana Trail, that's got very rocky sections, and it doesn't matter how good your shoes are, your feet are going to be beat up at the end of the day when you're doing it. And like camp shoes, get the camp, throw on my camp shoes, and wake up in the morning after being in the hammock, man, it's just right out, and it's like you don't even feel it. You're just like, all right, ready to go. In the tent, you roll out, you're like, oh, this sucks. Like, I don't want to go.
It would take me a while to get out of a tent, I think. But all right, well, I appreciate you coming on, and
thank you for having
being
me.
a guest on the show. And anytime that you're, whenever you want to come back on after, going out on some of your trips or whatever, let me know, and I'll be glad to have you back on.
Yeah, man, this is fun. So thanks for having me, and I pretty much stayed on topic. I didn't get on too many tangents, so it's good.
No, everything's good.
I'm bad for that. I edited a lot of stuff out in the videos because I'm going to talk about something. I'm like, ooh, a caterpillar, and I just get off topic.
All right. Well, it's good having you, and we will talk to you later.
All right. Thank you very much. And take care.
Thanks, Kurt. It was great having you on with me to chat some about how you got into hammock camping and how that led into the creation of Hemlock Mountain Outdoors. I always love hearing how the cottage vendors got started. I will have all of the links in the show notes so that you can check out Hemlock Mountain Outdoors and see all of the great gear that Kurt makes. Don't forget to check out all of the other podcast shows that are on the Hiking Radio Network as well. There is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, the Trail Dames Podcast, and Hiking Unfiltered. And if you like what we're doing here on the Hiking Radio Network and you want to see our shows continue, please consider supporting us with either a one-off or monthly donation. You will find the donate button on each of the Hiking Radio Network pages at hikingradionetwork.com. Also, don't forget to leave a review and share the show on your social media to help the show grow. Until next week, happy hanging, everyone.